And the second thing I said was futurist and climate activist Alex Steffen said, in fact, these days, cynicism is obedience.
I was going to read that quote. Keep going.
Yeah, if I'm cynical, I'm obedient to the way things are. I'm not going to do anything about it. I mean, why would I if nothing I do makes a difference?
Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast. My name is Melissa, and this is Sammy. We are diving deep into conversations that connect and inspire. Stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Stories that take us to the heart of human connection. Please note that opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast. Please listen with your kindness and an open mind. Each story shared is authentic and vulnerable. Let's embrace our differences with empathy, knowing every voice enriches us. Together, let's cultivate a community of respect and curiosity. Thank you for listening. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired.
Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast, everybody. We are here today with Sam Daley-Harris. Sam wrote the book Reclaiming Our Democracy. And honestly, I'm going to be really real with you. When we first thought about the idea of introducing or talking to Sam about this, we weren't really sure how to go about it. But like, this conversation is so powerful. Because we rally behind causes with all the ones we've done: Earth Month, Childhood Cancer Awareness, SMA. We're doing domestic violence and homelessness, and many more to come in the future. If you are in a place where a cause is really important to you and you want to make a difference in it, you want to see change, it is the biggest thing that calls to you, and you just don't know how, or maybe you already are, but you don't know how to go to the next level.
This is it.
This conversation is for you. You need to listen to this conversation with Sam. And not only that, he's got a sign-up sheet. If you need help, you can he will get you sign up for his sheet. It's in the show notes, and he will help you. He will help you figure out how to make to the next step. It's an incredible conversation. I don't know, Melissa, if you want to add something about other than it's incredible.
I'm just going to say that it is a very empowering conversation. I would caution anyone, if you're feeling like, oh, I just don't like to talk about politics, or politics are dry. If you kind of shy away from talking about politics, this isn't that conversation. It sounds like it because his book is called Reclaiming Our Democracy. It sounds like we're about to head into a very political conversation, and it's far from that. What it is just understanding how you can make the most of your time and opportunity to create change in whatever arena you want to make change in. Yeah. That is it. That is what we are about to talk about. How can we create change and lasting change, and not just feel overwhelmed by there are so many things in the world that need to be changed. Let's take the overwhelm out, and let's talk about how we can go about it in a really enlightening, fun way.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and creative.
How to empower you to make the change you want to see. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Hey, welcome to the podcast, Sam. It's so nice to see you again.
Oh, it's great to be with you. With the Sam, I wasn't quite.
Yeah, that's fair. I know. I said to my kids, I said, who are you recording with today? I was like, oh, his name's Sam. And they're like, but that's you. I'm like, yes, but it's another person. Anyways, we're jumping into chatting about, we're going to throw this episode right in the middle of doing Domestic Violence Awareness Month and Homelessness Awareness Month with our podcast this year. And you wrote the book called Reclaiming Our Democracy. And reading the book and reading about the book and the premise of how it's just about educating people and empowering people to stand up and fight for the causes they believe in, is just a powerful message. And so I wanted to start off with asking you a question. Probably everybody asks you, but I'm going to ask it anyways, is what is the story behind how this book started for you?
Well, the story behind how the book started is really the story about how I started. And so if you wouldn't mind, I want to tell the story of self. It's developed by a Harvard professor, Marshall Gans, and it basically asks what happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you to your commitment. And so I'm going to tell mine, but I really urge viewers and listeners to think about their own, what happened in your life and what decisions have you made that got you to listening to this podcast and the other things you do in your life. So this is my story of self. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music. And I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic Orchestra for 12 years and taught high school music. And 45 years ago, I founded the anti-poverty lobby Results. And a lot of times I'm asked, music, poverty lobby, what's the connection there? And when I look back in my life, there's certain experiences that start pointing me in a different direction. The death of a friend around high school graduation in 1964 and the assassination of U.S. Senator Robert Kennedy around college graduation in 1968 got me to asking the questions of purpose. Why am I here? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? 9 years later, it's now 1977. I don't think you guys are around yet. I'm invited to a presentation on ending world hunger put on by the Hunger Project. And I go to this event thinking, well, hunger's inevitable. What do I know? I'm a musician. Well, I mean, it's inevitable because there must be no solutions. Again, what do I know? Because if there were solutions, somebody would have done something by now. But I go to this event and it's obvious right away. There's no mystery to growing food, clean water, basic health, literacy. I'm not hopeless about the perceived lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature, people. We'll just
Mm.
never get around to doing the things that can be done. But there's one human nature I have some control over, my own, and my questions. Why am I here? What am I here to do? So I get involved in a big way. And this is the end of the story. In 1978 and 1979, I spoke to 7,000 high school students, classroom by classroom, on ending world hunger. And before I went into the first classroom, I read some statements from Jimmy Carter's Commission on World Hunger and others calling for the political will to end hunger. So I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress? Like, what's the name of your member of parliament? I don't want to know if you wrote them. I don't want to know if you, just the name. Out of 7,000 asked, 200, fewer than 3%, could answer correctly. 6,800, over 97% couldn't tell me the name of their federal representative. And results, this anti-poverty lobby started out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington from these thousands of high school students. So that's my story of self, though. What happened in your life and what decisions did you make? Marshall Ganzall also calls it knowing your why and sharing it. And so I
Mm.
really urge listeners and viewers to think about their own story of self. What happened in your life and what decisions did you make? I think it's a very foundational story.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And like you're saying, like what decisions did you make? And I think so many of us can go through life not really realizing how many decisions we're making because
Mhm.
we're just going, right? And
Yeah,
Doing.
they're not decisions, but they're decisions without being decisions because we chose not to
yeah,
think about them, right?
yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know
It's
you talked about
powerful.
that story in your book. It's so powerful though, like hearing how that kind of shifted for you. And even your statement about how many knew their member of Congress. I mean, I wouldn't have known that in high school.
Yeah,
And even when I was reading your book, I had to, I mean, we don't have members of Congress. We have different, but I had to go look like, who is the person in my city? Do I know the
yeah.
right, like I had the name in my head, but I had to like double check. Do I have the right name? Am I right?
Right,
Yes,
right,
I'm
right.
right. Okay, I'm right.
Yeah,
Good. But
yeah,
I had to double check.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I want to ask on that, how does, and maybe this is a silly question, but I think it might be one that might help other people, but how is knowing who the right member is, how does that tie into being able to make a difference?
Well, this actually gets to what the book's about, and I'll talk about that briefly, which is transformational advocacy, not transactional advocacy, sign the petition,
Yeah.
transaction complete, but where you're trained, encouraged, and succeed at doing things as an advocate that you never thought you could do, like meet your federal elected official and bring them on board to your issue. You never thought you could do that. And when you do things like that, you see yourself differently. That's the transformation in how you see yourself.
Mm.
Um, of course, we want to talk about, well, does any issue change? Also, we can get to that in a moment. But so knowing you're a member of Congress is really just an entry point. It's just a first step. In other words, if I don't know who my federal elected official is, probably I'm not going to do anything or use that information because I don't even have it, kind of thing. So knowing wasn't the be all and end all. It was just an entry point. And so when you're engaged in one of the groups that I've coached to deliver transformational advocacy, yeah, knowing is the starting point. But really, what you're going for is a relationship. If you don't mind, I want to tell a very recent
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
I was on the phone with someone, it was a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying in September 2025, we're going to have our hike with our Republican U.S. Senator. I said, well, wait a minute. How many are going to hike? He said, there'll be about 2 dozen or so. It turned out to be 25. I said, how long will the hike be? He said, about 3.5 hours. So, well, wait a minute. When did this start? He said, well, when he was first elected in 2017 to the House and took office, he announced an 8 hour town hall meeting hike. And 8 people showed up, 6 of them from Citizens Climate Lobby, one of the groups I worked with. And he said he did it the next year, and so many CCLers signed up that he promised us our own hike. Well, that's a little glimpse. And I'll tell a little backstory. One last thing. On the first hike in 2017, someone said, well, what are you going to do about carbon? And he said, I was just mayor of Provo, Utah. I didn't never thought about carbon, and a couple of years later, this then congressman founds the Conservative Climate Caucus, which at the end of
What?
2024 had 87 Republicans on it. Now, some of them BS and some of them serious, but still, it's generate. You ask, well, knowing the name. Well, these folks don't just know the name. They're on a 3.5 hour hike, and it's their annual hike. And the first hike years ago, maybe it was 8 years ago, you know, um, uh, prompted the creation of, among other things, this conservative climate caucus.
I think I just want to say, like, yes,
So
that's
cool.
brilliant of the people advocating and fighting for it, but it's also brilliant of that congressman because not only does he get to go do something that he loves, he's only going to get people there that are really committed to talking about this topic because, like, you're not going on a 3 hour or an 8 hour hike if you don't seriously want to fix this
I hope they have
issue.
a lot of rests. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're also like I feel like that's so much more you're building so much more relational bandwidth with that person during that hike instead of just sitting in a meeting room where you can like
Yes.
bicker or whatever, right? Like I think that's creative
Moving
in
your
so many ways. So
Totally. I
anybody who's
love
in
it.
parliament or in politics that it has all these people calling at them, find something you like to do and tell people, all right, this is what we're doing. If you want to talk to me, here's where we'll be.
I was just gonna say because we live right next to the mountains too. I was just our member of parliament here is I do know our member of parliament. I was just gonna say, hey John, you want to go hiking? Like that is so cool.
Yeah.
What a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
All the way around, it's a good idea on both sides of the fence, and it makes it so it brings the humanhood back into a political conversation, right?
Well,
Like it's so much easier to be just it's just human to human contact as opposed to like you said, Sammy, sitting in a boardroom can be a lot more intimidating and a lot more conflict inducing, right? Like you're sitting there walking into a potential conflict as opposed to just like, hey, we're just
yeah.
moving our bodies in nature. That's
He
so
was on a
cool. I
guest
love it.
speaker in February on their monthly webinar. And he said, when you're in the outdoors, differences can melt away. Not like you don't have any, but at least you can talk a bit more openly than
I
at other
love it.
times. I think you were referring to that idea.
Yeah.
I love
I
it.
want to read this quote that's
So
from your
good.
book if that's okay.
Yep.
And so you're talking about advocacy and transfer advocacy and people find it too hard. And it says, most of us see advocacy as too hard or too frustrating, too complicated or too partisan, too dirty or too time consuming, too ineffective or too costly. But what if that's all wrong? What if deep engagement dissolves discouragement and can actually bring joy? What if you can become an advocate for a cause you care about and feel fulfilled, not frustrated? What if engaging an advocate is essential to protecting our democracy? Engaging as an advocate, sorry. And I'm like, it is a thing, and I think about all of these different causes that we've rallied behind in with the podcast here specifically, and how many people feel like, are we just shouting to people who already know what we're talking about? Are we actually talking to anybody outside of our already sphere of influence? Can you speak about how the transformational advocacy that you teach helps kind of get past that barrier of
Okay, great. So when I'm talking to a group, tomorrow night is my 115th in-person or Zoom talk. It'll be in person in New York City tomorrow night. And when I talk to groups, often, uh, I list three things to look for to know whether the group you're working with is going to deliver transformational advocacy. Now, some groups deliver services, it's backpacks for kids going to school or food at a food pantry. But a lot of times, what happens in the political realm improves or worsens the condition and the predicament and the cause you're working on. But anyway, so I list three things, and the first one gets to what you're asking. First is recruitment and community building. The organization brings new people in, not just to build an e-blast list, but to form local chapters so you're not working alone. And that's what you were talking about. Well, how do we get beyond our circle? And one of the first ideas of transformational advocacy is recruitment, bringing new people in, and community building, which I describe as one example as a whole of organization monthly webinar with guest speakers and Q&A and inspiration, recruitment and community building. Two, training. How do you get the meeting with the elected? How do you plan for the meeting? What do you ask for in the meeting? How do you write a letter to the editor? Two, training. Three, breakthroughs. The organization encourages breakthroughs, encourages you to move out of your comfort zone and see yourself differently. In the book, there's a drawing, a small circle labeled your comfort zone. And then there's a much larger circle labeled where the magic happens.
yeah.
So you're looking for an organization that will encourage, not kick you, encourage you out of your comfort zone over to where the magic happens. But it all starts with recruitment. And your question was, well, how do we get beyond our own circle? And that's by reaching out, tabling and guest speaking and that kind of thing.
So how would someone go about doing that? Like what does that look like? Can you walk us through what that
Well,
would look
here's the
like?
thing. What I recommend people do is I think we're going to have a sign up sheet in the program notes. Um, and on the sign up sheet, they could let me know they'd like some help in finding an organization that works to deliver transformational advocacy. In other words, I'm not exactly urging people to go start something, start an organization. I'm more asking them to find an organization that's delivering it. I'll tell this story that speaks to not delivering it. It was maybe 7 years ago. I was talking with the head of organizing for an international group. Everyone listening and watching knows the name of this group. I'm not going to say it. And this was the head of organizing. And he said to me, we can't let our volunteers write letters to the editor or op-eds because they'll get it wrong and misrepresent the organization. Protecting their brand was more important. That's not transformational advocacy. Well, I've been talking about Citizens Climate Lobby. In 2019, the year before COVID, their volunteers had 4,300 letters, editorials, and op-eds published that year.
Wow.
So what one group saying they'll get it wrong and misrepresent the organization, Citizens Climate Lobby was saying, well, what do we have to do to help them get it right? And give that to them. And as a result, they had
Smart.
4,300 pieces published the year before COVID. So,
So smart.
yeah, so I'm not really urging, I mean, somebody may go start an amazing organization. The only other thing is transformational advocacy is complicated in a way. And so I would also urge someone to join a group that's working to deliver it and then steal what you learn if you're starting your own, some of the techniques and methodologies. So you're not kind of walking blind in a dark room.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know what I love about your message? I love how I love how it is how empowering it is. Because it is very easy to think of, especially like if I'm going to talk just purely from my own perspective, just for a second, you know, we're running this podcast. We're talking to a lot of people about a lot of subject. We're talking about a lot of subjects that really need change. And it is overwhelming sometimes to hear things and to see things that need to change in so many different facets of life. And to sit back and be like, I'm little me. What can I possibly do to make
No,
any sort of
no,
difference in this massive thing that needs to shift? But your message is that we all have the capability to
no,
make change happen in whatever we see. And I love that. I love how empowering it is.
no,
It takes the overwhelm out.
no,
It takes the overwhelm out a little bit of like, what could I possibly do? And go, no, there actually is something that I can do. And
no.
it doesn't mean I have to create something from scratch. I can find somewhere something that I believe in, and
Yep.
I can make small changes that might ripple to
Yes.
other changes.
Yes.
Right? Like that
Yes.
story you told of the hiking. I mean, small changes turning into,
Yeah.
I love
Exactly.
it. I love it.
If I could just build on what you said about
Yeah,
little me,
please.
what can I do? That,
Please.
a lot of times I'm asked, why did you update and revise and re-release the book this year in paperback, the year before in hardback? And I was on a radio interview last year that was the answer to why this book. And it was a station in the United States, National Public Radio, a show called 1A that goes to 350 stations and massive audience for radio. And this was question number two in a 13-minute interview. He said, I have it memorized. He said, the passive nature to our politics today, you can feel beat down by it. I mean, this is my career, and I feel beat down by it. I don't participate the way others do because I'm a political journalist, but I do have to pay attention. It's a grind. It's a grind, Sam. I mean, I know you know that. What am I feeling? What is the way out of that? I was blown away. That's what his question. I was blown away by how vulnerable he was around his hopelessness, basically, and cynicism,
Yeah.
really. And the first thing I said was, well, Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweikert said, we aren't passengers on Spaceship Earth. We're the crew. Well, are we? And if we are, how does crew operate? And the second thing I said was futurist and climate activist Alex Steffen said, in fact, these days, cynicism is obedience.
I was going to read that quote. Keep going.
Yeah, if I'm cynical, I'm obedient to the way things are. I'm not going to do anything about it. I mean, why would I if nothing I do makes a difference? And if I could, since that interview, I've come to know an author, professor at Stanford. I love this title. He wrote a book titled Hope for Cynics: The Surprising Science of Human Goodness. And in the book, he says, if you're cynical, it's like you're playing poker and you fold your hand before the game even starts. And I say, well, if you're a civic cynic, you fold your hand before the parliament is even sworn in, before the first bill is even
Mm.
introduced. And so, yeah, so the little me, what can I do? It's everywhere. And,
Yeah.
I think we need that structure of support, that team. So not we're
Yes.
not doing it alone, you might say.
Yeah.
Yes. You know
Yeah.
what? That just gave me like a, because you, part of, I think, the part of where the overwhelm comes from, I think, in this new kind of world we're living in now is there is, and I'm not to say that overwhelm didn't exist before. I just mean I think everything is so heightened now because we have access to all the information at the touch of our finger. So we can find out right now, if we looked into it, we can find out the dire need of new medication for childhood cancer, of the statistics of children that have endured domestic violence, of the
Yeah,
statistics of climate change, like we can find that out and go, oh, like what do I do, because I care about all of these
yeah,
things. And it's very easy to feel that overwhelm. But what you just said is like, wait, as much as
yeah,
at the tip of my fingers I have access to find out how many things are in need, we're also all on the crew. So
mhm,
it's not just little me, it's
yeah,
all of us.
yeah,
So like we
yeah,
can all work together for these things. It's not just on one
yeah,
person.
Hmm.
absolutely. But I do urge people to focus. In other words, I'll work on this and I'll work on this and I'll do this. And
Yeah.
that's often way too thin. I
Yeah.
mean, really go deep on one issue that you care about. And in some sense, trust that others will step up on some of these other issues. Um,
Yes.
because you don't get to that transformational experience um, by just flitting from issue to
Yes.
issue.
I love what you just said, and trust that somebody else will go to the other issue.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like I have so
So
many
good.
freaking questions and not enough time.
Go.
I want to ask, okay, so how can you help what would be your advice to someone who is like, I have all of these issues I want to make a different one with difference in, how do I pick one? How would you help someone figure out how to zone in on which one
Yeah.
they should
Again,
focus on?
for me, it's more uh, can you find an organization that uh, that really will empower you? In other
Mm,
words, if I'm committed to this, this, and this, but only the middle issue, have I found an organization that will feed me power? Then I should pick that one for now and get trained in how to find and use my power. And maybe I'll go to another issue later, but it's not that easy. And I'd mentioned the program notes, other briefly, reclaimingourdemocracy.com. On that homepage is the find out more, is that little sign up sheet where I can help folks connect with an organization that works to feed power to their volunteers rather than just a click here. Let me tell you this one other story. There was a study by a group in the States called the Congressional Management Foundation, and they asked grassroots advocacy professionals, staff, grassroots, let's call it lobbying staff,
mhm.
what the primary tactic was with their volunteers. 79% said an email form letter was their primary tactic. Give me your name and your zip code or your postal code, and we'll send the letter for you. 79% said an email form letter was their primary tactic, but only 3% of congressional staff said an email form letter was highly effective.
Wow.
Out. 94
Whoa.
94% said an in-person constituent visit on an issue. An in-person issue visit with constituents was somewhat or highly effective.
That's a
94%.
That's
So yeah.
interesting.
So
pretty big
again,
imbalance.
I'm pretty Johnny One Note on the transformational advocacy, but I think it's really important. If I could tell a story of a volunteer in Indiana, her name is Maxine Thomas. I always say she's amazing, and she is. But we're all amazing if we get the right training. Uh, Maxine has a lived experience of poverty. I'll do a shorter version of this story. She eventually finds results and gets a scholarship to go to the Results Conference in Washington, D.C. And she has her first ever meetings with her senators and representatives. And at the end of that day, sorry, when I talked to her on the phone, she said, I had a heart for service, but I was clueless about advocacy, especially political advocacy. And then she goes to Washington, gets training. She has this day of meetings. At the end of the day, she says, I was euphoric. I was on this high and felt I was part of something revolutionary after meeting all of her elected officials. So from I was clueless to I was euphoric, that is transformational advocacy. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
I feel like it's like when you're saying like that in person versus email. I don't want to like be a bit of a cynic here and put this out there, but I feel like it was a piece of when you think about that, right? I'm not trying to be a cynic, but when you think about it, like it used to be you had to like back before emails existed, you had to make a phone call, you had to show up in person to let people know. You could write a letter also, but again, writing a handwritten letter is far more of a commitment than a written email. So a handwritten letter, showing up in person, or make a phone call. Emails are so easy for people to write now. And you think of how many people are saying, here's an email template to email. So then you do it and you feel like you're making a difference. Oh, okay, I said something. I sent this email, which don't get me wrong, I have done too. For some things, that's all you can do. But recognizing that if it actually really matters to you, you need to do more than send an email. You need to make that phone call. You need to show up in person. But I think organizations themselves have made it feel like, well, you can contribute by doing this. And yes, it is a little bit of a contribution, but it's not what's ultimately making the big difference, right? And so
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's just knowing those statistics of what we just said is really
yeah.
interesting.
So let's talk about the big difference now. So here, people are having a better feeling about themselves, the transformational advocacy, but does it matter in terms of the world and in
Mhm.
terms of the challenges of the world? So let me tell this part. Results, the anti-poverty lobby that I founded 45 years ago, 41 years ago, started lobbying on what was then called child survival. Now it's called a bit more maternal and child health. And at the time we were lobbying, UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund, was reporting 40,000 child deaths around the world every day from preventable things, things like measles coupled with malnutrition. And we lobbied every year, 85, 86, 92, 93, 100, 2010, 2011. The latest number from UNICEF and the organizations that do this work is from 2023. The 40,000 child deaths a day has fallen by 66% to 13,125 a day. Still scandalously high. It is saving 10 million young lives a year
Yeah.
compared to the early 1980s.
Well, and
And
the
so,
population growth that's happened
oh
since
yeah,
then.
yeah, yeah, yes, absolutely. That's part of the
Sorry.
statistics in the book. Yeah. So, so there's been now who knows about that progress? Most people, you go out on the street, how's the world doing? You'll hear some variation of hell in a handbasket or something. They don't know that, uh, 10 million lives are saved every year compared to the early 1980s because of vaccinating kids and other basic health measures. So let me go a bit more in this story. In the United States, enter Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Marco Rubio doing some drastic cuts to these programs, these child survival and other programs. Um, the Lancet, the British medical journal, basically says if these cuts hold, some 14 million additional deaths will occur between now and 2030. Well, here's the glimmer of good news. On July 23rd, the House Appropriations Committee in the US, not the Democrats, the House Appropriations Committee basically rejected a number of Trump's cuts for 2026. So, for example, I'll give you one. This year, the maternal and child health is funded at 915 million US dollars, and Trump called for 85 million, a 92% cut for next year. Well, the House, not Democrats, the House Appropriations Committee approved the full 915 million, not the 90+% cut. And so
Yes.
there's that glimmer of hope. And I'll add one last thing. Earlier this year, 128 members of the House, led by two Republicans and two Democrats, 128 signed a letter to the top appropriators on this issue and other issues too, but on this issue. And so I've been waiting for uh, transformational advocacy to begin showing up now this year. And the fact that the House committee rejected, I've got other cases too, in that particular case, is indication. Now the Senate has to act next, and then it has to be in a full bill that the president signs. But
So he may be saying all this stuff, but all the other people are stepping up and saying no.
well, let me say finally stepping up, because it hasn't happened too much up until just with this
Wow.
first action on July 3rd. So,
That's
Wow.
I
yeah,
love when you called that a glimmer. And
Hmm.
it's also hopeful and again, I'm going to use the word empowering to find your information from different sources because again, it is so easy to be buried in the fear mongering that goes on
yep,
and the fast tracked information that's flying at us via social media and the internet and like
yeah,
things are flying across our screens all the time and it is so easy to get kind of sucked into it. But that's a those are statistics you just gave us. Those are
Yeah.
yep,
numbers. Those are
yeah,
like
yeah,
factual things that are going on. So like maybe would part of transformational advocacy be finding the truth, the real truth,
yeah. Making
and like
people aware of it.
really doing your research and
Yeah,
putting out not just I mean everybody's opinion is important, but
yeah.
not just
And
opinion, but
putting it out
fact.
to my team and then to the elected official and then in a letter to the editor and then in a talk we give or whatever. Let me do one more. And also, I want to say it this way. Since 2002, when the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria was launched, Canada, for example, is a big part of that and contributor to that, 65 million lives have been saved through the Global Fund and its partners like PEPFAR and others since 2002. Where do you read in the paper
Hmm.
about 65 million
Right?
lives being saved? Um,
Yes.
in my talks, I have this photograph back when Trump first was elected, the first term. He called for a 29% cut, and we got it overturned, and it became a 16% increase. But I have this photograph of a woman uh, from Margaret Smith from Texas, and she's holding her U.S. Senator Ted Cruz hand, Republican, with two hands. And she said to me, I learned in results that I hold Senator Cruz's hands with two hands and I don't let go until I finish my laser talk on the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria. That was 2019. That was the first year that Senator Cruz ever said yes to a results request. And so, yeah, there's so much to do, so much to be a bit hopeful about. Uh, and yeah, we just need to
Yeah.
find a place.
And that positive information, like Melissa was saying, both of you were saying, is so hard to come by. There's, in terms of climate, for specifically, like we did Earth Month earlier this year,
Yeah,
and having people talk about how they can help and how they make a difference. And there's a gentleman we follow on Instagram, and his name's also Sam, and he's all about sharing like the positive things that are happening in the world. Here's the good climate things that are happening. And we follow a lot of climate accounts and very few of them point out the positive things
yeah,
happening in the world.
yeah,
And so it is important to
yeah,
see
Focus
those
on that.
those glimmers, those good things
yeah,
that are happening amongst the chaos. It's good to know what needs to be changed, but you need to know what's also happening. Otherwise, you can feel like nothing you're doing matters
Yeah.
because nothing's changing, but things are changing. You just have to actually look for the evidence that they've changed.
yeah,
And you know what, Sammy, maybe like take it one step further and take Sam to take um your message and to take that one step further and go, here's the good news. How did they get there? What did they do to make that happen?
yeah,
Right? And how can I take that on into my cause or the thing that I really
yeah,
want to advocate for and use that to benefit?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
all of those stories that Sam tells that are good news stories. Okay, what are the people doing that made that happen?
Right.
Like,
And
maybe it's better for
well,
us to dive into that than to dive into the
woe is me. And but how do I
right.
take the good news and work to make it even better? Also,
Yes.
Yeah.
how do I help to build on what others have gotten it to up to this point?
Yeah. I want to quickly read this quote, which is kind of ties back to what we were talking about before, but it's from your book still. It's very relevant to what we were just saying with the optimism versus cynicism. But the whole piece from your book says, optimism is a political act. Those who benefit from the status quo are perfectly happy with a large population of people who think nothing is going to get any better. In fact, these days, cynicism is obedience, which is what you said earlier. What's really radical is being willing to look right at the magnitude and difficulty of the problems we face and still insist that we can solve those problems. And I think like everything you just talked about is exactly what that is. Is like, how do you look at how bad it is and say, well, we can still make it better? How do we make that difference? And I feel like I remember I was in my 20s and I was with somebody in a car and we were pulling into a parking stall and there was a shopping cart in the parking stall. And I was like uber pregnant at the time and it was winter and icy. And the person driving was like, wasn't my husband, but the person driving was like, that's not my problem, and just pulls into another shopping or parking spot. And all I thought was like, that is the problem. That is the attitude that is wrong with the world. Is
Yeah.
everything you see that's an inconvenience or a problem or something wrong is you go, it's not my problem. And like, not that you need to make everything your problem, but I think every problem you come across, you can maybe all you can do for that problem is send an email. Maybe all you can do for that problem is share the Instagram thing. But you have to have certain problems that you're actually invested in being the optimistic person that can make the difference.
No.
Because you can, like you said, you can't invest in everything, but you can do something little for certain things and really invest in something else. I think.
Right.
I don't know. What would you
Right.
say?
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. There's a good quote I love. It's from Anonymous. Uh, Be outrageous. It's the only place that isn't crowded. And it's kind of like be outrageous with your happy soul, be outrageous with your kindness, be outrageous with your contribution.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
I love that so much.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. I want
I'm
to
a kind of an outrageous person. I love that so much. It's very encouraging.
I want to tie I even think that that applies to things that aren't, even if it's a cause you don't believe in, but I mean like as long as it's helping people. If it's a cause that you maybe you don't agree with, not disagree with, but you don't believe in, doesn't call to you, but it's helping people, like you can still, okay, I don't know, here's, share the reel about it, share the clip about it, whatever. Tell someone, oh, I heard about this. You know, you don't have to invest in everything to make a difference. But
yeah,
I really,
yeah,
what I want to say is I
Still
want to
push the
tie,
cart back.
yeah, still push the cart back. Might not be your job. Maybe you're not getting paid for it, but you can put the cart away so the cart
no,
person doesn't have to go get it.
yeah,
I want to tie back into what you're saying way at the beginning of our conversation, talking about how only 200 students knew the name of their political person.
yep.
We have a lot of parent people that are in our demographic that are parents of young children, teenage children that follow this podcast. What would you say to parents? How can parents help their kids learn about who this is, and how can parents teach their kids how to make that difference?
I often would say to people, because you never know who can get involved. Someone would come up to me and say, I heard your talk. But I have two young kids at home. I just can't get involved. Someone else will come up and say, I heard your talk. I have two young kids at home. I've got to get involved. Different people, they are able and hear different things. But my basic response to your question is really mirror it, behave it. Let your kids not hear about it, but see you in action, observe you. I mean, I have a friend who wrote a book. She has a new one updated coming out next month. The first book was titled From Changing Diapers to Changing the World.
Oh,
And her basically, it's she started with a poopy baby going to visit a congresswoman for the first time ever with her baby, who's now in college. And just had this whole journey of making a difference and empowering folks and
So
going
good.
from changing diapers to changing the world, both at the same time. And then the diapers were done. But um,
Good.
yeah, so, mirror model is the word I really wanted. Model it is the best way to
So,
teach your children,
so good.
including bring them along to the
Yeah.
congressional meeting. I'll say one other thing. If you're in a meeting with a member of parliament, and let's say there are six of you, and one of them's a high schooler, or two of them are high schoolers, and the others are older, I don't know. It's almost like there's some written rule that, well, we don't want the high schooler to get cynical and discouraged. So their voice and is louder than others, and so
Mm,
young people's involvement really matters a lot.
I love that so much.
That is also super encouraging because I think like as a mother, you're like, there's all these things in your brain. Like, did I get to the doctor's appointment, the dentist's appointment, the school is on time? You're like all of the things that are floating around in your head. But just to be and to allow your children to learn from you, it doesn't have to add something to your list of things to do. They're You're just embodying something that they can learn and that
Yeah,
they can learn and take this on for themselves
yeah,
too, and that they know how to do this.
yeah.
I would like to ask, I might fumble this a little bit because I'm formulating it in my head, but I think Sam, you might be able to help me with this. So we're talking about transformational advocacy here. We're talking about people fighting for a cause that they believe in. Can you explain just, I mean, I think that listening to this episode thus far, viewers, listeners, probably putting it together by now, but I want to just make it super clear. Why is it so important? So, say, for example, so we did, I mean, there's a lot of causes that we've kind of rallied behind. Right now, we're going between domestic violence in September and
October.
October, and sorry, domestic violence in October and homelessness in November.
Yeah.
So, say domestic violence is a cause that I'm rallying behind personally and I want to make some change. Why are we talking so much about politics when we're talking about making change in nonprofit organizations, in whatever it may be?
Well,
Like in whatever. So,
yeah.
can you tie that in for us why
So
we're
here's the
talking so
thing.
much about
I don't,
politics?
I'm not immersed, for example, in the domestic violence issue.
Hmm.
But if we brought into the room one or two experts and uh, on the on the issue, I'm sure we could ask them, is there some policy that the city council or the provincial legislature or the federal legislature could enact that would empower victims of domestic? I don't know. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there's something that that's a barrier or a block to helping victims of domestic violence uh,
Yeah.
lead thriving lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asserting, well, I know for sure in homelessness, there are decisions that the city or the province or the country makes that hinder or exacerbate um, or improve the
Yeah.
homeless issue. Um, and yeah, I have this friend who's doing some amazing work at the moment in California on the homeless issue, someone you might want to talk to. But so here's the thing, the bottom line is I assert that whatever the problem, I'm not saying politics solves it, but there's some impediment, there's
Mm-hmm.
some barrier, the removal of which or the addition of assistance of which could really fuel uh, progress toward a resolution of whatever, whether it's domestic violence, homelessness, or some other issue that you're focused on. It
Yeah.
can't be that there's nothing the government does that ever impacts the issue. Now, probably there are some key things that the government does or doesn't do that
Mm-hmm.
help or don't help,
Yeah.
depending on the issue.
I
Does
think it's
that
one of
make
those.
sense?
Absolutely. I think we can
Yes.
think like, no, we don't need the government to step in. It doesn't need to be rules. We need people to be better. And I'm like, yeah, but people are better when there's rules. So like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love for everybody to just be better. I would love for everybody to be more aware of the poverty in the world, to be more aware of the climate
Yeah.
changes difference they can make, to be more aware of how to raise good humans that aren't violent, how to help somebody who's homeless, how to like it'd be better if everybody could do that. But
Yeah.
it doesn't always most of the
Yeah.
time it doesn't happen, right? So the policies that can be put in place to help direct us in that way, not in all areas, but in some areas, can make a huge difference. And maybe it's the removal of a policy. Do you know what I mean? Maybe if there's a policy in place that needs to be removed because it's actually hindering helping people. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be
Yeah.
more policies.
Yeah.
It can be
Yeah.
less too.
And people who are deeply engaged in this issue or that issue would probably be best aware of the change that
Yeah.
is needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, and certainly understanding like who your advocate is in the government, who your representative is in the government is a really great step and is a key, I think, that it's a key in change making.
Yeah.
I'm like having visions of like picnics and hikes and
Wow.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it so much. I love I keep saying the word empowering, but I just love how
Mm.
empowering this conversation is.
Could I tell one more story?
Absolutely.
Please. Yes.
And her name is Ellie Sparks. And when she told me this story, she was a volunteer in Citizens Climate Lobby. And now she's on staff. And she said to me, when I joined CCL, I was suffering from climate trauma. I would read Bill McKibben's book, Earth, and I would weep at home and I would weep at work. And then I joined CCL, and 18 months later, I was co leading a workshop on building relationships with your members of Congress, in her case, and your editorial writer at the newspaper. And she said, what in the world does a relationship with a member of Congress look like? And how do you get a relationship with an editorial writer? And I'll tell a little bit of her story, but I'll skip to the end. She said some of the organization use the model of a work relationship. I adore romance, so I use romance as my model. And she says the first meeting with the editorial writer, it's like a blind date. Only you've decided beforehand you're going to marry this fellow. You're going to be sweet and interesting. If it doesn't work out with the editor, you're going to marry one of his friends at the paper, the science editor, environment writer, business editor. Someone at this paper will find you interesting and compelling. At the end of her talk, she talks about meeting with 20 congressional offices over 4 days. And she says, going into their offices was hard. I had to let go of a lot of emotional baggage. I could no longer judge them or hold hostility in my heart toward them. I had to let go of my fear of climate change and my fear that they wouldn't listen to me. I had to center myself in love, releasing fear and centering in love. This is sacred and profound work. She started at climate trauma and she ended up at sacred and profound. And that is the journey of transformational advocacy. And
Yeah. Oh my. So I'm
I
writing notes as
love
you talk. I'm not looking at my phone.
I know.
Oh
I
my
had
gosh.
the same thing.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible, right? That's incredible for her to shift
good.
so much. So much. I was going to ask to wrap up a question. I was going to ask what's one thing you want people to know about transformational advocacy, but I feel like maybe you just answered it. But
yeah, I mean, I oversimplified, going to the program notes for the sign up sheet or to reclaimingourdemocracy.com, and there's a learn more button where you could get that sign up sheet and get some help in connecting with an organization that works to deliver transformational advocacy. Don't do it on your own.
That's an amazing service that you're offering. I just want to be like super, super clear for listeners, viewers. So you are in the States. We're talking about reclaiming democracy, but anybody can go and sign on for this, right?
Yes.
Like
Yep.
this is not just an American thing. This is
Yep.
anybody who signs up for this can get your help with that, right?
That's
I
right.
love that. That is
Yeah.
such a cool thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Sam.
so
Like, we're
inspired.
really excited to release this episode. And just,
Oh,
I know this because of all the other causes we've done. And we've just started digging into the other two right now. But the ones we've done in the past is constantly we hear from people like, I'm doing all this work, I'm doing all this stuff. And I just feel like I'm shouting at people who already know what I'm talking about. And that's not where I need to be. I need to be
Yeah.
shouting at people beyond that. And
Yep.
so I really hope that this episode can empower people in our upcoming months, as well as our previous months and anything to come and anything beyond those, to help people be like, okay, I can make a difference. Let me start.
Yes.
Let's just start with learning who I need to speak to,
Yeah.
and then work my way forwards from there. Just, yes.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much,
Love
Sam.
it.
We really appreciate your time today.
I loved
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks for spending your morning with us, or afternoon. It's afternoon there, isn't it? Anyways, thank you so much. We're so grateful.
Have a great rest of your day.
Okay.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, it was
gosh.
it was so good.
Holy cow. I'm so pumped right now. Like, I'm so pumped because I think, like, you and I, if it's not clear already for everybody, I think that you and I are both the kind of people that, like, oh, this cause, I want to make it better. I want to make it better. I want to make it better. And then it's just like, where can we put our energy the most? But this is just, I just think this is so cool. And it's something I never would have thought of before. Like, I wouldn't have made that connection before, but like understanding, you know, your representative being able to take any cause and bring it to policy, bring it to government I just was like, yeah, of course. As soon as he started saying that, I was like, oh my gosh, of course. There is a man that we follow. He is in the UK and lost his childhood cancer and has been lobbying ever since. Hughes Law.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I kept thinking about him. I'm like, he's doing this. Yeah, it's Never You charity.
Oh, yeah.
Hughes Law. He is like, he's in the UK and he is doing the things that Sam is talking about. And it's just, it's massive.
There's so many things I thought
Watch
about while he was chatting. Like, I think about, like some of the conversations we had in childhood cancer where people are like, are we just shouting to ourselves? Like, are we?
Yeah.
And like, they're doing so much on social media and they're doing charities, they're doing fundraisers, doing so much. And, I don't know if any of them are. I know that they have lots of charities. I don't know if any of them are reaching out to members of parliament or are writing to their anybody, right? I don't know if they are. Maybe they are. And what else can they do to fight for, more than 7% for childhood cancer? And, SMA, we talk about like Jessica Jansen has been doing that. She has been doing, and I'm not saying these other people aren't. I'm just saying I can see the results of hers in the sense that all these kids are now screened at such a young age, which has turned into this huge change for everybody with a baby ever since the screening started. I think about when we did Earth Month and with Remat and the mattresses, and I emailed with him back and forth a few times, and I was talking to somebody, talking to a representative, I don't remember who it was, and I'm thinking like, I've been thinking about this off and on about like, what else can I do, because my email is not going anywhere. They're saying like, oh, it doesn't matter, or not that it doesn't matter, that's not what they said, but basically it's not in the budget. And I'm like, well, how can I push them to reevaluate the budget more? Like, my email is not enough, so what is the push? Maybe that push is showing up, right?
I think it's like when he said that height thing, I was like, jeepers, that is the coolest idea. It is the coolest idea because it just softens everything. It reminds me of when we were talking to John and Mark and how he was saying about how, like having a dinner with everybody all together, like it just softens the edges. Wow, what a moving conversation that was.
I hope this empowers people. I hope that we have people come out who are doing their own thing and frustrated. Maybe they're frustrated with what they're doing and where it's going to or how it's turned out. And they're going to leave this and be like, okay, here's my next step. This is my next step. I'm going to fight for a coffee with my MP. I'm going to fight for a meeting I'm going to fight for this, right? Whatever it is. Like, I hope that. And like get your, like, if you're doing domestic violence, if you're whatever it is, homelessness, childhood cancer, rally, get the people that you're with, get the other people, don't just go yourself, get the other people who this matters to, and all call a meeting with this person. Do you know what I mean? All go together, get it together. Don't, not get it together like in the main way, but like in the get together and do that, right? And it's giving me so much inspiration about certain things to do that too. Yeah,
Love it.
absolutely. So
Totally
good. So
love it.
grateful, Sam. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. To help support the growth of this podcast, please feel free to leave us a review, follow us on socials, or recommend us to your friends. Your support honestly means the world to us. With love, Sammy and Melissa.